A mother's love can drive her to do anything, even pretend to be a maid to test her son's girlfriend. But what happens when this test takes a shocking turn, and everything Karen thought she knew comes into question? The twist in this story will leave you thinking long after it's over. Karen had always been fiercely protective of her son, Ethan. From the moment he was born, she made it her mission to raise him well, to teach him the values of kindness, respect, and hard work. As a single mother, she had sacrificed a lot for him. Ethan had grown up into a smart, successful young man, and Karen couldn't be more proud. She had done everything in her power to give him a good life, and he had turned out to be everything she had hoped for. But there was one thing that had been bothering Karen for a while: Ethan's girlfriend, Jessica. Karen had heard about Jessica from Ethan. She had even met her a few times, and while Jessica was polite and sweet, Karen couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. She worried that Jessica might be with Ethan for the wrong reasons, perhaps because of his money. Karen knew that Ethan had come from humble beginnings, but now, as an adult, he had done well for himself. And that was when the doubts started creeping in. Karen had noticed that Jessica came from a wealthy family. She had all the right connections, and she seemed to live a life of luxury. Karen didn't want to jump to conclusions, but she couldn't help feeling that Jessica might be interested in Ethan for his status and wealth, not his heart. The idea that her son might be taken advantage of filled Karen with worry. One afternoon, Karen decided that she needed to know the truth. She couldn't let her suspicions eat away at her any longer. She devised a plan to test Jessica, a plan that would help her see how Jessica truly treated people, especially those who weren't in her social circle. Karen decided to pretend to be a maid. She would dress up in old clothes, put on an apron, and act like a regular servant in her own home. Ethan had invited Jessica over for dinner, and Karen knew this would be the perfect opportunity. She would observe Jessica's behavior without her knowing. If Jessica treated her poorly, like a maid was beneath her, it would confirm Karen's fears. But if she treated her kindly, maybe, just maybe, Karen had been wrong all along. The day of the dinner arrived, and Karen was feeling a mix of nervousness and anticipation. She got everything ready for the evening, making sure the house was spotless. She dressed in the maid outfit, carefully choosing a cheap apron and wig that would hide her identity. Karen's heart raced as she hid in the kitchen, waiting for Jessica to arrive. She had no idea how things would turn out, but she was determined to see the truth with her own eyes. When Jessica arrived, she greeted Ethan with a big hug and a bright smile. Karen observed from her hiding spot, watching Jessica carefully as she walked in. She seemed so charming, so polite, just like Ethan had said. Karen began to feel a little guilty for even considering the test. Could she have been wrong about Jessica? Maybe this was all in her head. But Karen wasn't done yet. She had to see more. She needed to know if Jessica's kindness was genuine or if it was just an act for show. Karen decided to enter the dining room, acting as if she were simply there to clear the table and offer refills. She made sure to move quietly, staying unnoticed by both Ethan and Jessica. She watched as Jessica continued to laugh and talk with Ethan, making small talk and asking about his day. But Karen couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then, the moment Karen had been waiting for came. She made her presence known by walking toward the table, carrying a tray of drinks. She quietly set the tray down on the table and began wiping it off, trying to act like a maid would. Jessica didn't acknowledge her presence. Not once did she look up at Karen or offer a simple thank you. She kept talking to Ethan, completely oblivious to Karen standing right in front of her. It felt like Karen wasn't even there. What happens when a mother's test takes a shocking turn? Will Jessica prove Karen's worst fears right, or will she surprise everyone? Keep watching to find out. Karen's heart sank. Was this really happening? Had Jessica just completely ignored her? The woman Ethan was so in love with, who seemed so sweet and caring on the outside, was now acting like she didn't even notice a simple maid standing in front of her. Karen tried to brush off the feeling of disappointment, but it was hard not to take it personally. Just as Karen was about to turn and walk away, something unexpected happened. Jessica suddenly stood up and walked over to where Karen was standing. Karen froze, unsure of what to do. She wasn't expecting this. "You've been working so hard all night, haven't you?" Jessica said gently, a soft smile on her face. "Let me help you with that." Karen blinked, confused. Was this the same woman who had ignored her moments ago? Was she really offering to help? Karen hesitated for a moment, but then handed Jessica the towel, still in shock. Jessica took it without hesitation and began wiping down the table. She wasn't just being polite now. She seemed genuinely concerned. Karen's doubts started to fade. The woman she had thought would be rude was now acting kind and considerate, not just to Ethan, but to her, too. Jessica, with her gentle smile, finished cleaning up the table. "I know it must be tiring, working all night long. You deserve a break." Karen stood there, completely stunned. Everything she had assumed about Jessica was wrong. The woman who she thought might be using Ethan for his money was showing nothing but kindness. The test had backfired, and now Karen felt like the one who had learned a lesson. What happens when a mother's test uncovers something completely unexpected? Karen's assumptions about Jessica are about to be shattered, leading to an ending that no one could have predicted. Will the truth finally come out, or will it be too late? Karen stood there, completely taken aback by Jessica's unexpected kindness. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. The woman who Karen had been so suspicious of had just shown the same love and care she would expect from someone truly invested in Ethan's well-being. Jessica was different from what Karen had imagined. The kindness she had shown was real, not forced or fake. Feeling a wave of guilt wash over her, Karen watched Jessica finish cleaning the table. She had been wrong about her. All the doubts and suspicions that had clouded her judgment earlier seemed meaningless now. Jessica had proven her to be someone kind and selfless, someone who genuinely cared for Ethan. After a few moments of silence, Karen decided it was time to stop hiding. She couldn't keep pretending anymore. She took off her apron and the wig, revealing herself to Jessica and Ethan. Both looked at her with surprise, their eyes wide with confusion. Ethan stood up first, his face filled with shock. "Mom, what are you doing?" he asked, clearly puzzled by her sudden appearance in a maid's outfit. Karen felt a wave of embarrassment, but she knew she couldn't keep the secret anymore. "I'm sorry, Jessica," she said softly. "I wasn't honest with you. I wanted to see how you would treat me, how you would treat someone who isn't part of your social circle. I didn't trust you, and I thought maybe you were only interested in Ethan for his money." Jessica stood there, her face softening with understanding. "I can see why you might think that," she said gently, walking over to Karen. "But that's not who I am. I love Ethan, and I would never use him for anything." Karen blinked, taken aback by Jessica's calm response. She had expected anger or disappointment, but Jessica was not only understanding, she was gracious. "It's okay, Karen," Jessica continued. "I understand why you would want to protect Ethan. He's a good man, and you've raised him well. But I promise you, I'm not here for his money. I care about him for who he is, not what he has." Karen felt her heart soften. She had judged Jessica too quickly. She had allowed her fears to control her actions instead of trusting her son's judgment. Jessica wasn't the person Karen had imagined. The warmth in her voice, her actions, everything about her spoke of genuine care. Ethan, still a little shocked, looked between his mother and Jessica. "I told you, Mom. Jessica is the one for me." He smiled and put a hand on Jessica's shoulder. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Karen felt a wave of relief wash over her, but she still couldn't shake the guilt. She had put Jessica through this unnecessary test, all because of her own insecurities and fears. But now she knew Jessica was the right person for Ethan, and there was no reason to worry anymore. Just as Karen was about to apologize again, Jessica took a step forward, her expression serious now. "Karen, there's something I need to tell you." Karen's heart skipped a beat. What else could Jessica have to say? "I never wanted to tell Ethan this, but it's important that you know. The reason I was so polite and kind to you earlier wasn't because I thought it was the right thing to do in front of a maid, Jessica said, pausing for a moment. It's because I've been in your shoes. Karen looked at Jessica in confusion. What do you mean? She asked, her curiosity piqued. Jessica sighed and sat down, her voice softening. I grew up in a wealthy family, but I know what it feels like to be treated as if you're invisible, to be dismissed by people who think they're above you. She looked Karen in the eye. That's why I would never treat anyone that way, no matter what their job or position in life is. I've seen how people can hurt others, and I promised myself I would never be like them. Karen's eyes widened, realizing what Jessica was saying. She had assumed that Jessica had come from a privileged background and had no understanding of humility. But she was wrong again. Jessica had a depth of empathy and understanding that Karen hadn't given her credit for. I understand now, Karen whispered, her voice full of emotion. You're not who I thought you were. When Karen thought she had everything figured out, Jessica's shocking revelation turned everything upside down. How will Karen respond to this new truth about Jessica? Keep watching to see how this mother's test finally comes to an end, and what happens next will change everything. The dinner had finally come to an end, and as the evening drew to a close, Karen realized just how much she had learned that night. She had misjudged Jessica completely. What started as a test to protect her son turned into an eye-opening experience. Jessica wasn't just kind, she was wise beyond her years. She had the strength to stand up to people's assumptions, and she genuinely cared for Ethan. Ethan, who had been quiet during the conversation, finally spoke up. Mom, I'm glad you see it now. You know I'll always love you, but Jessica and I are in this together, and I know we have a future ahead of us. Karen smiled, tears in her eyes. I'm sorry for testing you, Jessica. I should have trusted my son's judgment from the start. You truly are the one for him. Jessica smiled, her eyes softening. It's okay, Karen. I understand. You only want the best for Ethan, and now I know you're just looking out for him, just like I am. As Karen watched Ethan and Jessica together, she felt a peace settle in her heart. She had learned a valuable lesson that night. Trusting the ones you love and not letting assumptions cloud your judgment. The bond between Jessica and Ethan was real, and now Karen could see it too. With a final hug and a promise to spend more time together, the evening ended, leaving Karen with a newfound sense of relief. Her son's future was in good hands, and Karen could finally stop worrying. Jessica was the one he had chosen, and that was enough for her.